Kraljevina Danska u mnogo čemu nam je nedostižna, to je činjenica, ne samo po sebi, nego i ne samo nama, nego i većini europskih članica. Međutim, to što je nedostižna ne znači da ne možemo od njih nešto naučiti, pogotovo kada naiđu na probleme. Pozivam da mi se na pozornici pridruži veleposlanik Kraljevine Danske u Republici Hrvatskoj, Ole Frijs-Madsen. Mr. Madsen, molim jedan pljesak podrške. Okay, so as I've mentioned, this conversation will be in English, so we will talk slowly, and so everybody can understand us. Okay, we don't have much time. So let's cut the chase. The Kingdom of Denmark differs from the rest of Europe in many ways, as I mentioned earlier, including in the segment of waste management. So what is Denmark's secret? Is there a secret recipe?
We have many secrets, but I cannot tell you all of them, of course. But in terms of waste, I think we have decided many years ago not to consider waste a problem, but to make it an opportunity and to make it a commodity. Because if you look at it in that way, then you have incentives for citizens for recycling, you have incentives for business to use waste to develop new technologies, etc., etc. So I think that's part of it. Let me also say that we started many years ago to have quite strict spatial planning, which led to legislation. That also meant that we very quickly abandoned landfills. So I think currently we only have 5% landfill, and only for waste which cannot otherwise be recycled. So it has been a long-term process in which both politicians, institutions, municipalities, of course, and citizens are committed.
Okay, can we define approximately that long time? Are we talking about a decade, a quarter of a century, half a century?
I would say a quarter of a century, which I think also brings good prospects for Croatia to get there. We started our spatial planning in the 1970s. We may later get back also to waste to energy and district heating, but these facilities were already started in the 50s, but we can get back to that later perhaps.
Okay, in my speech earlier, my announcement, I mentioned problems. Of course, everybody has problems, so does Denmark. Namely, near the Danish village of Ulst, if I pronounced it correctly, in the north of the country, where about 400 people live, a slide occurred, a landslide of, how should we say it, garbage? What happened?
Yeah, so what happened 3 months ago was a landslide. You can say, compare it perhaps a little bit what happened in Zagreb recently, but the difference being that this was not a landfill as such. This was a big area where we deposited certain sorts of soil which needed to be treated. So it was not ordinary waste, but it was special soil from mink farms, from incinerators, from others. And unfortunately, because of heavy flooding, this whole pile of basically dirty soil started moving close to a nearby village. Things are now under control, but it was, I think, a warning also for us in Denmark that we have to be very careful on anything which is related to waste, because waste is, of course, also, as I said, an opportunity and a commodity, but it is also something which is dangerous, potentially unhealthy, toxic, etc. So we need to deal with it.
How this problem will be solved in a long-term aspect? Okay, you said now that currently there is no problem, the situation is under control. You've mentioned that also in Zagreb we had a landslide at Jakuševac. Okay, different types of garbage, soil, or whatever we want to call it. So how will you set this problem aside for the long term, and will somebody answer for it?
It's a good question, and I think we can all learn from this. The truth is, and this is public in our media, that the municipality had a role which they didn't take seriously enough. So if you as a municipality has a role for controlling, you should exercise that. And that didn't happen, let's say, sufficiently. So if the municipality in question had been more strict on their controls, it would not have happened. So it's not that the legislation was not in place, it's not that the safe was as such insecure, but there were warnings which unfortunately were not, let's say, caught by the municipalities. So I think that is the sort of conclusion, that you have to have rules and you have to follow up on these rules.
Yeah, I think something similar was said after the inspection in Zagreb and Jakuševac. Some things didn't happen strictly enough in the past. So, okay, the past is the past, the future is ahead. One other topic that I wanted to talk to you about was, okay, the Danish people are very familiar and very known for their recycling, but you put Denmark put as a country itself in such a situation that you had no mixed waste which supplies your energy companies, so you started to import the waste as a fuel. It seems to me like a lucrative business for the future, because there is a amount of lots of garbage all across Europe, and people, namely in Croatia or in any other country in Europe, pay you to burn and create energy. How is that possible?
First, I thought you asked me a question about cycling, because we also like to bicycle, but you were talking about recycling, and I understand. Yes, it seems like a paradox, of course, because it is, of course, a paradox. The reality is that we have become so efficient in recycling our own waste that we actually offer to treat other countries' waste. But as I said initially, waste is an opportunity, and it's also a commodity. So you have to see it that way, and I think certain Danish companies and municipalities have decided that in order to, let's say, solve a problem, in order to use this to actually waste to energy, to create heat and electricity, but also in order to achieve ours and Europe's global aspirations for climate change and for reduction of CO2, it all fits together. And on top of that, it's good business.
On top of that, it's good business. Just to repeat what you said, one other thing is going on in Denmark when we prepared for this conversation, when we done some research. There is a new trend, maybe, I don't know how new, but there is a new and popular trend in Denmark. People don't buy new things anymore. They don't buy, mostly, talking about most people, new furniture, new clothes, and everything. So they use old and wore out things. So what influenced that way of thinking in Denmark? Is there, I don't know, the bigger picture of ecological and green, or something else?
It's a good question. I just came back from Copenhagen a couple of days ago, and during my stay in Denmark, there were news about second-hand shops. We have roughly 2,300 second-hand shops in Denmark, and all know the Red Cross, of course, also here in Croatia, the Red Cross, and the Red Cross is running 240 or 250 shops of second-hand, so clothes and glasses and porcelain, whatever. And this was shop number 245 opening, and there were 500 people standing outside as if it was a sale to get into the shop. So Danes have become committed to this. I have 3 children myself who are now grown-ups, and they rarely buy new clothes. They buy mainly second-hand clothes. There are influencers and people in Denmark who tell, let's say, young people and older people like me, that they would only buy 1 or 2 pieces of new clothes per year. The rest would be second-hand. And I think it is a consciousness, and I think also in Croatia this will be coming from the next generation, because in the next generation it's already, as we heard, being educated in the schools about climate change, all this. So it is all part of the circular economy, and it's a trend which is there to stay.
I would like to see my colleagues, news reporters, of taking pictures of 500 people waiting before the opening of a second-hand shop. I remember the thousands of people waiting in front of Centar Cvjetno. I think it was a couple of years ago when what was opening, Zara or something. New iPhone. Okay, I think I would like to see it very much. I would like to see that things. I hope my children will be in such queues. Okay. Also, in Denmark, if my research was correct, 40% of all waste comes from the construction industry, approximately 5 million tons per year. Okay, that's why there was a law proposed that states that building materials from old buildings must be reused. What is this about, and what is the goal of that law? As I think Mr. Korlait was saying, that we in Zagreb have tremendous problems with building waste.
Well, it's a long story, and it's all about, of course, the energy cost of producing all these materials. I think concrete is the worst, with a lot of CO2 emissions. So the more we can reuse, if not concrete, then bricks or plastic or whatever it is, the more we can lower our energy consumption, our CO2 footprint. So that's basically the reason behind the law. All this contributes to the overall Paris goals, the overall climate change goals, the European Union's 2040 and 2050 goals. So it's basically in that light.
Okay, when you introduce a law or some kind of form of regulation, what is the higher goal? What is the goal? What is primarily thoughts about? Are there costs, citizens, politics, environment, or something else?
I think it's a mix, but I think one issue we should also not forget is public health. And I think public health in terms of pollution from industry, pollution from cars, pollution from whatever it be. So I think public health combined with circular economy, combined with all these things. And let me also say, it's perhaps a little bit out of this subject, but if you also watch what's going on in the global economy, then you will see a number of stock exchanges and a lot of companies who basically will have less and less, let's say, products from the black economy, and who will see more and more product produced sustainably. And again, I think the next generation will be, the next generation will have to invest their stocks and their future pension funds, they know where to put it.
Yeah,
and it will only be, the majority will be in sustainable products, which can actually put some companies out of work. So I mean, there's a whole ethic, which is bigger than the smaller issue. It's part of a bigger issue.
Okay, my last question. We have a minute and a half. Okay, we are in Croatia aware that Denmark is the higher standard than we are. Denmark is it's a higher standard for most of the countries of the European Union, especially the southern ones. But what kind of models that you have regarding waste management, recycling, reducing, and everything could we implement here in Croatia?
Sorry, can I have the question again? Sorry. I heard the first part. The second part?
What models
Yeah.
of in waste management, recycling, reducing, and we can implement here in Croatia that are maybe easy or quick to implement?
That's a very good question.
I know I have a lot of
It's a very good question.
Very good questions.
Perhaps there's any suggestions from the audience. I don't know. I would like to answer the question by a quote by a Croatian actor in this area. You all know him, Professor Julije Domac. I was on a television show with him once talking about similar issues. And he said a thing which was very nice for me because then I didn't have to say it myself. He basically said, Denmark doesn't do all these things because we are a rich country. Denmark becomes a rich country and stays a rich country because we are investing into the green economy. And I think this is a way Croatia and many other countries can also be going. So there are, of course, low-hanging fruits, but you also need a little bit of a direction and a goal, and perhaps a little bit of an incitement to go there.
And primarily not consider waste as a problem, but a solution, opportunity, and
that, yes.
Business first. Thank you very much for this conversation. Dame i gospodo, jedan aplauz.